All right, here we go. Hey guys, how's it going? Alex, lovely artwork going on behind you. Other side, the mirror
Thank
is.
you. I am live from New York, and not with my normal headphones. So if I'm talking weird, you guys have to message me that it doesn't sound right.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
comment in the chat if Alex sounds weird.
Yes.
How's it going, JR?
Not bad. I'm not live from New York. I'm live from Portland, but yeah, excited to be here. My first Twitch stream. So I feel like
Exciting.
my kid finally thinks I'm cool and is interested in what I'm doing these days. Thanks to you two.
You've made it to the top tier. Next, we'll get you on
Exactly.
TikTok, and then he'll care even
Yes,
more.
next TikTok.
And I'm going to say early happy Halloween, and we're in a Halloween shirt. Just want to put that out there because it's that time of year. Even though in England we don't celebrate it as much as you Americans do, it is. I love Halloween, so exciting times. So let's get into it. So welcome everyone to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your spend at AWS. My name is Stephanie Gooch. I am a commercial architect at AWS, and I focus specifically on telco customers across Europe.
And my name is Alex Head. I head up our optimization teams for all of our strategic industries, telco being one of them that Steph is on. And we dive into the customer's optimization opportunity, help them make some cultural shifts to really bring that in, and get to see some really cool stories that hopefully we'll bring to you today and in future episodes.
Awesome. So today with us, we have JR from the FinOps Foundation. So we're going to be talking about all the kind of FinOps things around the basics of what FinOps is, but also about the foundation. I've known JR for a couple of years now. I'm trying to think how long ago. It was probably like 2018, 2019.
2018, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, a while. And so he'll be sharing his background and his stories. And as always, we love to hear from you. So please put any comments, questions for us in the chat around the FinOps Foundation specifically, or about anything to do with FinOps or cloud financial management. So to kick us off, JR, do you want to do a quick intro in your background and what you do at the foundation?
Yeah, definitely. So I lead up the foundation as executive director. The FinOps Foundation is actually not a standalone entity anymore. We're now part of the Linux Foundation, which is a massive technology nonprofit that hosts like 700 different sub-nonprofits, including like Cloud Native Computing Foundation, right, which has Kubernetes and Hyperledger and a bunch of those really well-known ones. So I have the pleasure of working with a great team. There's about 7 of us who run the foundation. And we are here really to advance the people who do this work of cloud financial management. There's always, whenever I'm talking to, other people who've been in it for a long time, people in the industry, like especially AWS, I always have to clarify, we think of like FinOps as the same as cloud financial management or cloud economics or cost optimization or whatever term you want to use. We just picked the shorter version of that. But what's really fun is that we've got this really great sort of interactive community that there's about 4,500 practitioners now. Big shout out to you, Steph. You were one of the first 26 in the initial group in 2019 as a charter member. So really awesome to see you continue and be a shining star in this space. But that group has grown considerably now, right? There's thousands of them around the world. And we've got about 50 large technology vendors who are also part of it as well, who are certifying in different areas. And the community really comes together to basically do 3 things. It's first just drive community. Like I learned, I did 10 years as a founder of a vendor in the space. I was a co-founder of Cloudability before it was acquired by Apptio. And after that journey of watching and building technology in this space, the challenge that I realized over the years that was really interesting and hard was not necessarily like the tech challenge of how do we get a platform to look at cost or whatever those areas are, but it was really about how do we like do the cultural shift in the organization? How do we get people thinking differently about cloud, because it's not just rehosting ideally, right? It's about how do we get engineers thinking about cost, and how do we get finance people understanding that you have to account for cloud differently, and how do we get everybody to collaborate and work in real time? And so, the foundation really was, formed to get those people together to share war stories. And then we've moved it into now also certifications and trainings and also open source standards and best practices, which is really our big focus now, that are all vendor neutral and cloud neutral and really there to help the people who are doing the work.
Amazing.
So one of the things that I want to dive straight into that I've always thought was really interesting is my team, we don't always the hardest part about what we do is there isn't one size fits all, right? Because we're working with our most unique and largest, most complex customers. But what I do like is that you've taken that in the FinOps Foundation and said, yes, everyone is unique, but like here is kind of the top state of what people are doing. And I was wondering if we could start off by you going through a little bit of that state of FinOps that you guys do. I have always found it so valuable, and kind of your process around that.
Yeah, you mean the survey specifically that we do? Definitely. So if you want to follow along at home, it's on data.finops.org. And essentially each year, this will be the second year we're doing it. I keep saying this year, thinking about 2022, but forgetting we're still in 21. But the 2022 one is coming out in January. Last year, in 2021, we got about 800, 900 responses from our community, questions around what is FinOps and where does it sit in the organization? Turns out it mostly sits under the CIO or CTO now, but sometimes a CFO and sometimes a COO. Questions like, how are the teams structured, right? So it's a new discipline. Pretty much every organization that's heavy on cloud is doing some form of FinOps, whether they're calling that cloud financial management or cloud economics or anything else. And it typically starts, right, as we found in the survey, as somebody's side job. An engineer who gets interested in cost and really hates inefficiency, or a finance person who's like, this isn't right. We're not tracking enough. Let's get in there. But over time, the team grows. And so we surveyed, how big the teams get. I think the average size was 3 or 4. Some of them have up to, 20 or 30 people. Notably, though, the FinOps team, I was up to note, shouldn't really be doing the FinOps. It's not this team that's meant to be like doing all the cloud optimization. They're really there to sort of empower the rest of the organization, empower all the individual DevOps practitioners to do it, empower the finance teams to better account for it. They're sort of about pushing the practice out. So the survey dug into that. The top challenges, we found that getting engineers to take action on cost optimizations was one of the top things, forecasting, shared costs, a lot of things. And then also just sort of what tooling people are using. Hat tip to AWS, the most used primary tool was AWS Cost Explorer, which is great. But we're just kicking off the second iteration of that, starting data collection actually tomorrow. So looking for a whole new set of questions, challenges, and benchmarks that are coming out of that from the community.
Yeah, I think it shows it has such a broad spectrum that you really get some interesting insights there, and more detailed than just people kind of pulling the room. One thing that you said that I love is FinOps is there to motivate people, right? Like they're not necessarily the people that are going to go rebuild their application, but they're there to get people to care, to enable them, to help them get there. And I want to push this to Steph a little bit. I know that some of her customer engagements have gone along this way as well. And, she gets to network with so many people in this space. But Steph, how do you see customers doing that, right? Making that not taking FinOps, making it not the police person, right? Are you doing this or this, but really enabling their teams?
I think the first thing we always find is making sure that you provide ownership to everybody. So if you go around and yell at people for, like you said, to being the police and kind of be like, you're wasting money, it's not fun and you don't want to get told off at work, but kind of making sure that people have ownership of their accounts and understand why they're aiming to be cost optimized, so how they can get involved and do it. And then I think a thing that we've started to see is people wanting to do kind of gamification with it. So I know that when I was doing it before, and I did start with the first way I would describe, where I was going around and telling everybody they were doing a bad job, which didn't go down very well. And I know that now. And then when you started to give people the option to come and do it and say, okay, I've got all this data. Do you want to have a look at it? And they said, well, actually, my customer's been talking about cost quite a lot. Can I come and talk to you about it? And you say yes. You give them the data, you give them the tools, and then you allow them to do it. They feel that ownership with okay, I've gone and saved money, and I can now show the customer that I've saved money, and I get a pat on the back. So that's how I think people really take to getting involved with it. And then once you do that, and then you get lots of people involved, you can start to do a bit of gamification. And you can say, well, how much can you save comparatively? And not necessarily who can save the most, because I remember someone telling us, don't say that, because everyone's going to go and delete all of the EC2 instances and they'll have zero cost and they'll win.
Yeah. And telling people that too, what the biggest thing is making sure that they know where to see that. And so I think that's some of the things that you guys follow in that survey of, how are you viewing? How is your, what does that visibility look like for you?
Yeah.
What has conversations around that looked like for FinOps? And is that a hot topic, or do you think kind of people assume they have the visibility and just keep moving forward?
The conversation has actually shifted a lot since 2019 when Steph was in that initial group. Initially, it was all about people who were really in it, really committed, walk or run stage. We talk about a lot about crawl, walk, run as sort of progression of maturity in this. And it was like, how do I dig in and get better and better? A lot of it has shifted actually in the last year or two as we've gone to a much larger, base of big enterprises who are newer to cloud. Even though they may be spending a ton, it's less important to them because they've got a $2 billion IT budget, and cloud is a smaller portion of that. But there's something, that you said, Steph, that I really want to highlight that has shifted. We've noticed come up a lot, which is different stages. Like if you're crawl, there's very different ways that you try to get action, and there's very different things that work, right? And in that crawl stage, it tends to be like, yeah, can we just get basic visibility in front of people so that we can kind of police or maybe get them thinking about it? And then when they get into that walk stage, and we found this in the survey, we actually asked, like, what are you doing to encourage engineering action at different stages? The walk stage starts to get into exactly like you said, gamification, scorecarding. Mm-hmm. The run stage, though, is really interesting where, and this is a critical piece that I think, some people take for granted initially, and I'm sure you've all run into, but like getting like executive support and buy-in where the organization has made this like a priority that cost as a first-class citizen alongside security and performance, and it's part of architectural reviews and it's part of the pre-planning. So you're moving out of this like reactive world into a proactive. And I saw a great talk by this guy named Robert Duffy at KubeCon a couple weeks ago, and it was about how he leads platforms at Expedia, and it's about how they're doing this massive replatforming. And he talked about this idea that instead of a mandate, you need to create a movement, right? You need to bake it into everything and not go after people with a stick, help them understand why it's important and push it forward.
Yeah, I saw you reposted, I believe, on LinkedIn, an article about that. I think it had the terminology of the cultural change with the FinOps and how that looks. And I was presenting on a panel earlier this week where that came up. And I think that for that to actually work, you have to have a cultural shift, not only at the C-level and executive level, but then you have to have a cultural shift in the FinOps, DevOps, engineering world.
It's going to come top and bottom and come together, basically. Exactly.
Yep. Yeah,
that's spot on. And I think that shift. I mean, it's very much like shift into Agile or shift into DevOps or these things. Like in a lot of ways, I think that the idea of FinOps or CFM or these things will sort of go away over time, right? In the way that like it's just now the way that you manage your IT in the world where most of your IT is in cloud. Right. Mm-hmm. But we're in that dual mode right now where a lot of enterprises are trying to think about how to do our data center stuff and how to do cloud, and the models just don't come together.
Yeah, it's a race to find out who knows the next term, right? I feel like you've gotten to coin some good terms. We've been figuring out how to mess with efficiency in some of those terminologies, but optics is a good go-to for us. Our optimization intelligence, we've kind of stuck with it and run. But it'll be interesting to see. You won't need to. They'll be focused on hiring those people, right? But that'll be more of a ongoing, not, hey, let's make a argument for hiring a new role and a new idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what also been really cool. Sorry to jump in, but seeing like all the job posts and seeing all the people now kind of trying to hire people in the community, it's become this profession that is really desirable. And that's one of the things we're trying to figure out is like, how do we get more people in and get them trained? Because there's only a handful of Stephs in the world, right? People have been doing this for a long time, and everybody needs to hire them now. And that's, you mentioned like, what do you call it? One of our working groups in our FinOps framework, resource utilization right sizing, which is a terrible name, was just working to define like, what is waste? And then how do we define that? And is cost avoidance different than cost reduction and savings? And these are a lot of the conversations happening because just even getting consistent terminology that when you talk to finance and they talk to engineers, that they align, right?
Yeah, and there are very few Stephs in this world, so please no one take her from me. No, okay. On the cloud waste, this has been a hot topic for meetings I've had this week, and I have always, and Steph feels pretty strongly about this too, in the past 6 months or so, really shifted from using the term waste or cleanup to increasing efficiency. And in return, that is involved with cleanup. And, telling an engineer, why don't you set a goal of making your compute environment or your compute unit costs X better by next year, instead of, oh my gosh, you have $200,000 that you should not be spending.
Yeah.
This is coming up a lot.
I mean, you told me to ship this thing and make it fast, and do you want me to do that, or do you want me to ship the feature? Because I can stop all the work and clean up this cost tech debt.
Yeah, it's that balance, because people don't want to. I always found that with developers, they're like, oh, we could prioritize saving money, but we could prioritize getting things out the door. And it's like, no, you need to like build efficiently in the first place. And how do you measure that? I'm getting lots of job offers in the chats, guys. I just want to let you know. But yeah, that concept of making sure that people are building efficiently in the first place is something it's coming up more and more. And you're right, Alex, the efficiency metric. I mean, I'm having more customers talking after Andy's session last week. Check it out on our YouTube, where he talks about the automotive industry and how they came in and had like a efficiency metric. I think the day after we recorded that, one of my newer customers was like, I need a kind of metric. What do people in telco do? And I was like, oh, you guys are like the first ones who want to talk about this, and like starting to move into that world where they're not necessarily looking at cutting costs in the first place. They're looking at visualization, which you've already kind of talked about, and then like, what is the metric we're looking for? And like, what's the best one? We start with things like unit cost, and then we go into deep applications. Yeah, it's nice moving into a different kind of field of FinOps. It's changing all the time.
That unit cost thing is what we've talked a ton about and stuff since the beginning, right? And I think the conversation has shifted a little bit to like, well, what is the value that this thing is driving, right? And that comes back to what business metrics can we pull in. The definition the group came up with was waste was essentially, this is super simple, but simple is hard. Waste is any usage or cost of a resource which provides no value to an organization. Right? It doesn't mean you have to spend less if the spending is, driving more extra value, but it needs to be driving enough value.
But do you still feel a little bit like you want to push away that waste term? I still kind of, the term waste still gives me the heebie-jeebies a bit. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's just because I feel like if I go and tell a group that I really haven't earned trust with yet, hey, here's all your waste, it's not going to go over well.
It's true. Yeah. I think the other thing that comes in too is there can be like good waste. So if you think about reserved instance, break-even points or savings plan usage, even like some amount of waste in there is okay because of the savings you're getting, right? And you're making more back. But yeah, to your point, you go to a finance person or, tell them there's waste, or you talk to the engineer and say you're being wasteful, it definitely causes a pullback.
That's interesting, because I always use the term waste quite a lot. And now I feel like I should check my vocab. Because I think I come from, like JR said, I've been doing it a while. And so in my head, a lot of stuff I think about is where you do see massive wastes of money, where it's like big chunks of things that you could delete. And I think a lot of especially the development and the coding that I started to do was around like finding that and taking care of it. So preventing waste was a big thing that I was looking into. So it's like, how do I make it so that there are Lambda functions that are going to delete elastic IPs that I don't need, or start to review volumes and tag them and snapshot them and get rid of stuff? And so moving it away, but maybe I should check my own vocab. We've got a question in the chat, so I'll just pop it up. So do you think a beginner metric is just something that can help you see a trend, not necessarily looking for remediating for waste migrations? So I think summarizing
username too, AS Woolrich. So is the question there essentially what is the beginning metric, you think?
Yeah, I think let's go with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the beginning metric is that you don't just want to look at cost. You want to take cost with something else and combine them, right? So if it's revenue, that's fine. If you've got a model where you can look at page views or API calls, that's great. If it's some driver of activity, right, they want to combine the two. As the book, there's a great book that talks about this. It's like anytime somebody gives you a number, ask for another number. Factfulness, that's the name of the book. So I think it's about combining those initially to show trending, and also to recognize that there may be good waste, and there may be unexpected costs that are good and unexpected costs that are bad. And having something to look at the business value and that output, I think, is going to help figure that out. So you're not chasing things. I mean, Steph, you mentioned your server district Lambda. You could totally go spend a ton of time to optimizing that, but often the bill for it is, $100 a month.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
You want to get rid of all those elastic IP that I'll always go on about until I start working in FinOps. I'll always go on about elastic IPs. I'm not going to lie.
But when JR, when you said that there was a book, I thought you were going to plug the FinOps book.
Oh,
It's like, that's so subtle. The book that
yeah, there's a great book that I wrote.
yeah, you should check it out.
I think I may be quoting somebody else about that in the book, but yes, we did write a book called Cloud FinOps a couple years ago that covers a lot of the basics here.
So yeah, somebody in our, just to say that someone in our team was like, Steph, did you help write the FinOps book? And I was like, I think I like reviewed it, and they're like, I found your name. If you go on the document, my name's in it.
Yeah, I just happen to have a copy of it right here.
Here we go.
Here it is. No, I think
beautiful.
It's in here somewhere. I only have this because, not because I'm that vain, but because my co-author, Mike Fuller from Atlassian, actually recently sent me an autographed copy with him signing it. So I thought that was really cool.
How nice. That's really nice.
Yeah.
So on the topic of FinOps, I want to make sure that we have time to cover this piece, because I had kind of started hearing about the start of FinOps Foundation when I was at the Weather Channel and was moving to AWS. And then Steph was one of the first people I knew in it. And so, Steph, how did you get involved? What did that beginning couple of days look like, I guess?
I'm trying to think back now, because I was thinking back to, I remember going to, just before there was a London AWS Summit, there was a Cloudability FinOps Summit that happened like the day before, and it was kind of like a meetup. It happened in the basement of Cloudability in the UK, and I went along and I just started chatting to people who were interested in the same thing that I was, and I was very much like, whoa, there are people that care, like all 10 of us care about cloud optimization, and started getting involved. And then I think I must have spoken. I'm trying to remember. I remember speaking to Mallory, you know Mallory.
Yeah.
And I wonder if she pulled me in. I'm trying to think back into how I started speaking to you. Yeah, I think she must have been like, here, talk to these people. And then got recommended to start chatting to JR. But I have to thank JR. He's the one who helped me start out, especially with my like talking, because we talked a lot when I first started and came to the conference. Back in the day, what was it? CloudyCon. Just
CloudyCon. Yeah, I unfortunately wasn't able to actually attend that conference, but I hear it was good.
That was fun.
Yeah, I mean, that was the interesting thing in the early days. That Mike and I, when we were working on the book, we sort of selfishly used the early foundation members to write the book. So we would have a call every week on a chapter. We're like, okay, we need to figure out what to put in the chargeback chapter. Let's do a call. So we had this great group that Steph was in, of like 25 folks around the world who would jump on a call every week and talk for an hour about how they were doing that at their customers, at their own organizations. And that's sort of been the ethos of this. It's been really fun to see. Like, it's a really collaborative conversation with like we've just built a framework that's all about real world stories, not case studies, because vendors put out case studies. Everything's great. But we have practitioners saying what worked and what didn't and where they failed, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, definitely. That community vibe, I think, is one of the reasons why I really wanted to get involved and learn, because I was so new to it. I was coming from a DevOps area, but I was teaching myself as much as I could. And then having all these experts who were doing similar problems and being like, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that before. And like starting out, especially like JR said at the start, in that stage where we were all really hungry to like do loads of work and be the best and get really involved. And to do that, we just all talked a lot. And now it's grown into this massive group of people that can just communicate and chat about these ideas all the time. It's amazing.
Well, and at that point too, I mean, none of us that were at customers and working in sort of a FinOps role, it wasn't called that, and we didn't get hired to do that, right? So we had all kind of evolved into it, which I think is an interesting piece there. So, now that's been 4 or 5 years. You guys have grown quite a bit. So what's the future of the FinOps Foundation? How do people get involved?
Yeah, the future for us is that everything is really revolving around the framework, and the framework being, one of the things we learned out of the State of FinOps Survey this last time was that the thing people wanted the most was a roadmap. How do I make sure that I'm building the practice the right way? Or how do I prove to my boss that I'm doing the right things? So FinOps.org has pivoted, and it's very much an evolving thing that is open source contribution based, that is all about like, okay, well, how do you get, if you look at the Adopting FinOps link on there, how do you get your executives on board with why and how they need to build the practice? Okay, you've got that. Now, what are the key capabilities that you need to build? And those are all open source. About half of them are completed now. We're looking for more contributions on the others. Okay, you've got that. Now, what do measures of success look like at the crawl, walk, run stage in each of these? And it's a little bit different and nicely, I think, what's the best term for it? Complementary with an E to the well-architected framework, for example, because we don't get into how do you go into AWS and optimize your Elastic, whatever the hot thing to optimize right now is. It's more about how do we get the cultural change? How do you set up the team, the organization? What are the core capabilities you need, regardless of what cloud or vendor or anything you need? And then we're also trying to help point people at, and we don't make recommendations for any vendor, but we say, okay, you need to solve, an allocation issue. Well, AWS has cost categories here, or you might want to look at this third-party vendor who does some metadata, or you can use this open source tool. And by the way, here's 10 consultancies who can help you with your strategy, right? So really about bringing that community to do that, and really having it be open, not pitchy, and fit in that framework. But I would say the best way to get involved, long answer, if you're a practitioner doing this, you sign up on FinOps.org, and the best thing we have, I think, honestly, is a free monthly summit. We get between 500 to 700 people who join this for, it's 2 hours. We get 12, 15 speakers, multiple content tracks, breakouts, and there's just great stories and conversation that, again, all feeds into the real world stories in the framework.
Yeah,
I really recommend checking out the website. Go get
strongly
involved.
recommend. If you have listened to more than one of our Twitch shows, please go check that out. And it's just a great way to figure out, like, maybe you've touched FinOps a little bit in your current role and you're like, oh, I kind of want to dig into it, and seeing what those possibilities are. I know one thing too, that, they have, I believe, their own Slack channel. Sometimes FinOps jobs and things like that will get posted in it. Shameless plug of, we have 2 open commercial architect roles on optimization on our team. We are growing and it's exciting, but we need some good people. So if anyone's listening in, you can head to our LinkedIn, and we'll or email costoptimization@amazon.com and make sure we can get you set up to chat.
Yeah, definitely.
So cool. We're hiring a head of community as well.
You could do a plug. Go for it.
Keep plugging. It's what this is for.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. So we've got a couple of minutes left. So, Jay, any kind of final thoughts that you want to share to encourage people to get involved in FinOps or the foundation or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is just getting the conversations going in your organization. If you think it needs to be there, there is no shortcut. Like, you don't just buy or implement FinOps and it's done. This is a years long process for a big enterprise, and you're never really there. I actually, when we ask people what stage are you in, they say, I'm run stage. And I was like, no, you're not. I don't know anything about what you're doing, but you're not run stage, because everything is constantly evolving. We were talking before this started about the curve file. There's so much in there, and then new products get added, or there's a schema change, and there's a relearning process. There's new products to look at. There's new cloud offerings to consider. So I think just recognizing this is a muscle that the organization needs to build, and the FinOps team centrally may get maybe to the run stage, but you've got 10 other new developers who aren't there yet, right? So getting that going, and just starting to read and consume and evangelize internally. If you're newer to it, we've got a FinOps certified practitioner that is a great baseline of knowledge. There's some higher level courses as well, but I think recognizing that this is a long-term commitment to getting more value out of your AWS and the organization being more successful in cloud and getting that going.
And I heard that you guys just had your 1,000th person certified. That's awesome.
We did.
Wow.
And there was a big challenge in the last summit because I have not been certified yet. So a few of our original core members who also haven't are going to get certified.
I have.
Drop our scores. Because I knew all the questions and answers, but they've been updated, and I'm not on that committee anymore because it's all open, groups.
Oh my God. Yeah, I was one of the beta people that tried it out at the CloudyCon that I did that exam back in the day. Still got the badge.
So I'm gonna take it and post my score to LinkedIn. So if anybody wants,
yeah,
to
definitely.
I'm in.
All right, I'm gonna take the challenge. I'm gonna do it there with you. So
all right,
go ahead and tag me. I'm there. I'm gonna do it.
Nice.
You heard it here first, guys. This is what's gonna happen.
Oh, I also want to throw out if anybody can't afford to get certified, need or otherwise, reach out if we don't want money to be an issue on these things. So we have scholarship programs. So please let us know if you need help with that.
Amazing. Someone's just suggested that you do the original exam rather than the new one. But to wrap it up, thank you so much for joining us, JR. Next week, note the clocks change in Europe differently to America because, of course, and so we in Europe are going to be going an hour earlier. In America, it's still the same time zone, so just FYI. And next week, we're talking about sustainability and how that affects cloud cost optimization, which I think is fascinating. So thanks all. See you here next week, and have a good rest of your week.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.